this government using corporate media is laying the groundwork for a murder.
There was a lot about this story that never gets reported.
With regard to those pictures of Polikov's, I took the liberty of taking two of them that showed the blood-stained place on the sidewalk where Daniel Faulkner fell and where he was allegedly shot with multiple shots missing him on either side and one shot hitting him in the head, as testified at the trial by Cynthia White and by Robert Schobert. I sent these electronically to, in the highest quality that I could get a hold of. I sent them to a gentleman named Robert Nelson, who is the head of photo analysis at the Jet Propulsion Lab in California. I know him because he did me the service of analyzing the bump on George Bush's back during the 3 debates in 2004, in which he was able, using the techniques of photo enhancement that he uses to make those satellite pictures coming from the Cassini satellite in Saturn, to look so sharp and clear. And he used that procedure on these 2 photos to look for divots in the concrete where a high-velocity bullet, like those that were allegedly in Mumia's gun, would have made in the concrete if they missed the body and hit from almost point blank. And he found nothing. So it isn't just that you can look at these pictures and not see anything. In his effort to enhance the definition and the contrast and find minimal depressions in the concrete that wouldn't show up to the naked eye, he also couldn't find anything. Now, he didn't say it was conclusive. He said that it would take a better picture and more time to say absolutely rule it out. But what he did say was that with his preliminary effort at doing this, there was nothing there. And I think that's very significant.
When you look at Mumia's case, there's instance after instance after instance where the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has taken its precedent and turned it around when applicable to the Mumia case. Now, Dave had mentioned something related to Prosecutor McGill's penalty phase argument about appeal after appeal after appeal. There was something even more equally outrageous, that Mumia's opinion came down the first time from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in March of 1989. In February of 1989, the Supreme Court issued a ruling essentially saying that if this particular legal point is violated, it's an automatic new trial. This legal point was of such ancient origin that it requires a new trial. 28 days later, they said it's no longer applicable to people who are convicted of killing police officers. That's where the abu-jamal exception phrase came from. I was looking back at 1995 and looking over how media looked at what Sabo was doing, and there was a couple of things that popped out. One was that Sabo's actions were so biased that even Philadelphia's normally anti-Abu-Jamal media criticized it. The Daily News and the Inquirer both wrote editorials criticizing Sabo's bias. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, within a month span before the hearing and a month span after the hearing, there were over 700 articles published in papers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the United States, Europe, South America, and Southeast Asia. You hear what I'm saying? Hundreds of articles. Many of those articles pointed out the bias of Sabo. Now, the defense team, when they appealed Mumia's that 95 hearing to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, they said, listen, you don't believe us. You don't believe us when we say that there is bias. So here, look at these articles. And when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court issued its ruling in 1998, it said the opinions of a handful of journalists do not convince us that Judge Sabo was incapable of being impartial.
When we met with the police commissioner, right at 8th and Race at the Roundhouse. The police commissioner said, what can I do? You know what they'll do to me. And his officer, Bird, she said the same thing. I'm saying you have the outgoing who is scared to speak up. Now we have a new police commissioner that's coming in. And from my understanding of people who I talked with in Chicago, they said this man is 10 times worse than Rizzo. When I talked with people in Washington, they said the exact same thing. Also, Mr. Nutter. And Mr. Nutter is the man who, when a resolution was put on the floor for Mumia, stating that Mumia had a fair trial, and he signed a resolution without knowing anything about it, but just, he said, it's no big thing, you just signed it. But he signed a resolution that told a lie, and out of fear, and out of wanting to be mayor. And he has kept his mouth shut about the issue. So we have two things happening here. We have a mayor that's coming in that will side with injustice, and we have a police commissioner that is coming in that's known to do the same. Our position is we must talk to these people now because people's lives is on the line. We have evidence. We're not without. But what we are without is justice. We're asking people to simply go into your churches and get in contact with these council people and put pressure on the media. You must demand that the media cover the other side. Where are they at today? Where is the media at today other than independent media?
I'd just like to understand a couple of things about the photos. Why weren't they cited at the May 17th hearing?
In a circuit court hearing, you're very, very constrained at what can be done. The only thing you can talk about are the specific issues that have been appealed from the federal court below.
I really need to understand what happened, why those photos didn't come out before they did. Now you said that the photographer took them to the DA's office,
and he offered them to the DA because he thought he had crime photos. He might be able to sell them. That's what he was doing. He was trying to make some money, and they didn't buy them. They also didn't tell the defense that they existed, which is questionable because they didn't know they existed. He tried again when it became news in '95. The DA didn't want them. He didn't offer them to the defense because he wasn't interested in the defense. And after that, he forgot about them because
that's the bit that surprises me.
It's not an interesting story for him. He doesn't have any money to make.
He must have known what a high-profile case this was and how.
Yeah, but up until
he come forward.
But no, sir. Up until I've talked to Mr. Polikoff a couple of times. He made his effort. He did what he felt was his citizen duty to make these available to the district attorney's office. They turned them down. If they weren't important to them, then they really weren't important to him. And they were consistent in that kind of like stiff arm was consistent with what he had heard police say at the time, that, open and shut, abu-jamal's the guy.
And why didn't he attempt to provide them to the defense?
Because he said that after he presented them to the district attorney's office, or made an effort in 1982, and they didn't say anything, and he feeling that Abu-Jamal was in fact the person who did the shooting, why would he try to help the defense? That's what he said.
Why didn't the police utilize those pictures? And it's very simple, behind the fact that it shows very clearly that they were lying. And I think that they need to be approached about what they did, and also the other mainstream media and about these pictures. Why haven't they seen it as important? Here you have pictures to show that a crime scene was changed, evidence that the police had, and that showed that nothing happened the way they said it happened, and there's nothing. And then the question is never, why these things, but it's always pointed to, well, why didn't he do this, and why didn't he do that? Why didn't they do what it was that they were supposed to do? They are legally bound to do this. This man wasn't bound to do anything. He did what he thought was right. I really thank you for, bringing that up, which allows us, in this dialogue to make it plain. Download the information, and wherever you at, make sure you get the information out there.